Hi. So welcome to our bisexual representation in the media panel. Is that the right title? I don't. Bisexual representation. I'm Phoebe. This is now my second panel ever I'm hosting, and I'm hopefully getting better.
You did great.
Great.
Yeah.
It's fine. I just babble when I'm nervous, so just go with it. I am an actor and an activist. I do a lot of work with my union, campaigning on sort of disability rights and stuff, and I'm bisexual and poly and love my queer family and stuff. And I think it took me a long time to realise I was bisexual because when I was growing up, I didn't even know what the word was. So I think we've got better from that, but we're going to look at how far we've actually grown. So I will let our panelists introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Nicole, Pacent. I played Aster in Anyone But Me. I am bisexual. I have been out for, oh my God, I'm old. 18 years, wow. So more than half my life now, which is really cool. I came out publicly, to the internet, right when Anyone But Me came out, because I made the choice that was really important, to have some representation. And when I first came out, I was kind of like, okay, you can call me gay if you want, or whatever, it's what it is. And then after time, I was like, no, you need to use the word bisexual. So I'm sure that will be coming up quite a bit, the importance of using that term specifically. But yeah, that's me. I will say a lot more on this later.
There's seats at the front if you want to sit down.
Yeah, we're so lonely up here in front.
We're not that scary.
I feel like we're the teacher. And
Come to the front, yes. No, we started late. We're only
I was late, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, because we do the same thing.
Yeah, we do the same thing. Do I do the introduction for us?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'm just letting people sit down and stuff.
Yeah, it's hard.
I'm not going to wait because it's going to be forever.
There's all lots of changeovers, so yeah.
So I'm Marie-Diane, MD, and this is Mariya. We're hosting a podcast that is bi-positive on bisexual topics. We're also therapists, psychologists, so it's really more oriented towards mental health, but not only. And also we worked on the impact of representation and mental health. So that's us, and we're bi, both of us.
Yeah. And we do the same thing, so she introduced both of us.
Together. And to clarify, we live in the Netherlands, and I'm from France, and she's from Ukraine.
Woo! Hi guys, I'm Heidi, and I'm from Canada. I wrote a web series called Avocado Toast with my co-creator Perry, who's the feisty redhead in the second row. Our show is about bisexuality and mental health and what happens when millennials try to talk about those things with their baby boomer parents. It's a comedy. I am bisexual. I have been out to only my best friend Perry for a good 3 years, and then to my parents and my family and the internet at large since March when we launched the trailer for our TV show, because it's based on our true life experiences. And so everyone in my family and my friend circle were like, is that show about you? And I think it was sort of my way of coming out. I made something with my craft, with my art, and I put it out for the world to see, and then I couldn't really debate about doing it anymore. I just had to be who I was, and it's been a wonderful experience.
I have a very similar coming out to my extended family. I did a play where the lead character was bisexual, and I didn't realise until the first day that the programme said that I was also bisexual, and I read it and went, my gran is coming to see this. I don't know if she understands what that means. And all the people from my mother's church, my mother is a priest, so there was a lot. I was like, cool, well, this is just the way to do it. So my next play is going to be about being poly, and do it the same way. It's just the most efficient way to come out, I think.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, good bisexual representation that you think exists, that you have seen anywhere in any media ever.
If someone else wants to take this first.
I mean, my first was Callie from Grey's Anatomy, and that was before I had ever even been with a woman. And it was sort of twofold for me, because she's a curvaceous, beautiful woman, and I wanted to be an actress in film and TV, and I've got a booty and boobs, so I was like a curvy woman, and she's into women. I just found her captivating, and because that was such a popular, widespread show, it really meant a lot to me.
I'll think about it. I'll think it now. I've been asked this question so many times before. I'll think about it. I mean, honestly, it's just, I hate to say it, but there's so many more bad ones that come up, which might be the follow-up question.
Yeah, that is the follow-up.
Oh, cool.
You've been on one of my panels before. I like Dorothy from All for One, because she just out and says it. Although it's quite binary, so there's that. But she does very, in like the second episode, she's like, I am bisexual, and it's like she said the word. She said the word. Nobody exploded. Compared to, say, Piper in Orange is the New Black, who like very avoids it. I mean, that was going to be again. I'm trying to think of other people who Lost Girl again. Yeah, I like Lost Girl's good. Well, I think has good and bad.
And so Brooklyn Nine-Nine did a great job of that with our dear Stephanie Beatrice, who was on this panel with me at Vegas ClexaCon, and she has said that the writers conferred with her, which is wonderful, about that whole episode and really wanted her input and wanted her to approve everything that they did before that came out. And she said that she cried over the number of times that the word bisexual was used, because it just meant so much. So actually that character, I think that's very positive. Yeah.
And I think that's about bi people being involved in the creation of the stories, because we know the words matter. Yep. I think. Yeah. So bad representation. Pick your top three.
Alice on the L word, like, was she even bi? But there's so much of that. There's so much. It's like one of two things. Either it's like a phase, which is always a really fun trope for everyone.
One-off episode.
Like a little phase, which happened, if any of you are even old enough for this, happened on Sex and the City too. Where and not naming it is the other thing. Is being like, I just do what I want, and you're like, can we name what this is? Like, you're throwing the rest of us under the bus. I mean, I don't need everyone to have a label. I think, like, obviously in a perfect world, none of us would have labels and we would just exist as we are. But I think until we get to that point, making it so that, like, bisexual is a dirty word is really problematic. And I think that happens all the time with bisexual characters, where we're just like, we're just not gonna say it.
Sex and the City was pretty horrible.
Awful.
And I can't imagine what Cynthia Nixon was feeling when she was filming that. I don't know where she was at in her own identity development, but and then I think my trauma, personal, growing up, because I'm not that young, was Buffy and Willow's story that didn't make any sense for me. Yeah. Because she was apparently happy in a relationship with a guy, and then, 2 seconds later, she's a lesbian today. There's something that didn't add up for me, and I think it would have basically changed my life if I had like the words said in that specific show, because it's all I had back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm stealing Nicole's. It's just Alice from the L Word. It just sticks out because I have rewatched the show so much. And Perry and I wrote a scene in our show where our characters are watching it. So we went through all of the L Word and we found every terrible thing said about a bisexual, and then wrote them down in a black and white script. And we're just like, how did no one flag that this is extremely damaging?
I mean, that's not counting Jenny, who has the crazy crazy evil
bisexual.
She's
like the crazy, evil, cheating bisexual person.
Yeah.
I mean, I always tell people to watch the L Word, even though I know it's terrible. I'm like, I just feel like you have to go through it.
Like the rest of us, you must.
We had to. I watched it when I was 17 and I was definitely straight. I just really, really liked it.
Well, I do think, actually I was just in a musical called Lesbian Love Octagon, which is as awesome as it sounds. And it's about the lesbian scene in the 90s in New York, which I was like at the very tail tail end of, not even really, but I remember like what that culture was, and the creators have talked about how like they really wanted to include the how the trans and bi communities got left behind in that, and how exclusive the lesbian community was at that time, and they do a great job of like poking fun at it and making things funny. But I think it's important to talk about things like that, and the L word, and ways in which we were left out, because at least we're having these conversations now, because until very recently it was completely socially acceptable to do that. Entirely socially acceptable to just be like, oh, that dirty bisexual, you know. And a lot of times people still think it's okay, but at least we're talking about it.
And going off of that, I also wanted to add one of the shows that I grew up with. One of the first queer shows that I watched was Queer as Folk, the US version. And there was an arc where Lindsay, one half of the lesbian couple, she does have an affair with a guy, which really doesn't do the label of bi justice. She never defines it. We don't know if she's bi or not. But just the very fact that she cheated on her wife with another guy, it made me feel very, very dirty in a way.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just plays into the stereotype without taking care of it at all. You know.
And I think leads very nicely into my next question, which is about those tropes about bisexuality. So cheating, sexually promiscuous, evil, crazy, but then also you look at my list. But like then also feeling like you have to be a good bisexual, so you feel like you're. So I'm
Phoebe and I had a conversation
about this last night. Like, so I'm bisexual and poly, and I'm like, oh no, I'm that. But that's not me saying that all people who are bi are poly. You can be bi and monogamous, and I worry that like by being that and being open about that, I'm perpetuating negative stereotypes, and it's just like you can't win on either side. So have thoughts, fix it.
There's so many. I think, you know, besides having all of these stereotypes, the most important thing is to remember that to remind yourself that whatever those stereotypes are, and you may be a stereotype, and it's okay to be a stereotype, and it's okay to embrace those parts of your identity that other people may find questionable, because you know what, screw them. At the end of the day, you know, this is the kind of work we do with clients who are queer, who come in and they're like, well, I don't want to be that because that's bad. That's what they tell me is bad. I'm like, it's fine, it's you.
The thing is, it's a stereotype. Stereotypes are not always untrue, and they're not necessarily negative. And so you're bi and poly and might be a stereotype, but okay, embrace it. I mean, she's wearing flannel.
That's fair.
I think it's also so important to remember that labels serve a wonderful purpose, but just like every straight person's sexuality is different, every gay person's sexual preferences are different, every bisexual person's definition of their own sexuality and what they believe a relationship to be is vastly different. We're not all going to be the exact same. So,
I feel like I'm in like personal therapy session. Just like these are my issues. Help.
Yeah, no, I think there's the problem with all of these myths. I want to say, and maybe not even myths, because like we are saying, you know, there are stereotypes for a reason, and certain things exist that are true. But taking them as fact generally across the board and saying this is true for everyone actually creates an enormous amount of like internalized biphobia, which I don't know if anybody in this room has felt that, but like I've struggled with that for a long time. And to the conversation that Phoebe and I were having, because we're both bi and poly, which is the first time I've said that in public. Thank you. Woo! But like, it took me a huge amount of time, years and years, and a lot of pain to come to terms with that, largely because I was like, I will not be that bisexual that needs to be, you know, doesn't want to be monogamous. Like, I will prove to everyone that I could be a monogamous bisexual. And it was just like, oh, to what end? Jesus Christ. Like, they were two different things. First of all, I know plenty of bisexual people who are monogamous, and they're like, I could never do that. And I'm like, good, great, awesome. You guys can be the exception to the rule. Happy about it. But like, you know, I think about about that, and I think about all of like the anguish that could have been alleviated if I hadn't internalized all of those things that were always told to me about like dirty, non-monogamous bisexuals. And also if those things weren't just always collapsed together, if I could have parceled that out and been like, wait, I think probably I'd be poly if I was straight. I think I'd be poly if I was gay, to be totally honest, But, also knowing what the word poly was would have been really helpful. And not just been like, you're a cheater, But no, I think that ultimately, all these stereotypes and myths add up to like hating ourselves for no particular reason. And to your wonderful points, like, it's who you are. That's not inherently wrong,
Watch Gabby Dunn. Gabby Dunn is how I figured it out. I think she's like, I brought up the last panel as good portrayal of mental health and poly, and she's really open about it. And she was the first person who talked about it on the internet, and I was like, oh, right, that's a thing. And she's somebody I think who's talked about that kind of good versus bad and embracing. Yeah, I'm a slutty bisexual. What's your problem? So back to the word bisexual, because I think obviously I kind of want to encompass sort of anybody who's multi-gender attracted under that, so pansexuality, and other words that I can't remember right now. But I think kind of we want to look at under that umbrella and kind of why people are so scared of saying it. I don't know if anybody has any theories about why it's avoided so much.
Well, we discussed this yesterday, actually. In a lot of languages, even in the English language, bisexual is like the only word you can use for that, and sex is inherently in the word. And sex, our culture in general is very sex negative, if that's a thing. It's not sex positive, and so we avoid talking about these kinds of things, and by just linguistically the word bisexual becomes dirty. I feel like it's just like the word homosexual. You don't want to say that word,
but you
say gay. Yeah, you can say anything else. Wow. That's one of my theories.
Yes. I completely agree and have thought the same thing before.
Wow. Yeah. I never thought that, so learning a lot. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, when you have to announce your sexual preference that way, and you have no other way of saying it, it's inherently like, ooh, especially if you're talking to your parents. Hi, I'm bisexual.
Yeah, it's inherently about sex, isn't it?
Yes.
People think it's always about sex in a way that I feel like that's not, even for gay people, it's not quite as seen in the same way.
Yeah, my mom always, she'll call me and be like, so I told your aunt you're gay, and I don't even want to correct her because I don't want to talk about sex with my mom. So I'm just gonna do it. Fuck it. Okay, great.
Yeah. Do you want to call her right now?
I know I'm getting a therapy session too.
So, what do you think could be done better than is doing now?
Everything.
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 Do you think do you have any kind of specific in representation? You think? So we know, for example, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, they talk to a bisexual actress. What do you think, as kind of, I guess from your different points, as creators and as people who work kind of in mental health, what do you think are the things that we can do, what anybody could do to kind of make it better?
Well,
Tumbleweed. Anybody from the audience got any quick fixes?
No, I think, so many things. I mean, obviously just creating more bisexual characters and more bisexual characters who actually identify that way versus like, maybe they are, or who are like in and out and, doing that whole thing, and everybody is doing guesswork on it. So somebody who just comes out and is that, or even where that's just like a part of their character. They're just living a human life, and they're bisexual, which is how I feel that I am with my friends who have known for however many years. They're not like, this is my bisexual friend, Nicole. So I think that would help. I also do think that there needs to be more exploration of kind of the communities that we as bisexuals straddle, really. No pun intended. But really, because I think one of the things for me in coming out and coming up was, I was always like a really big Disney fairy tale kid. I kind of still am. And when I came out, I was like, well, what does this fairy tale look like? I had pictured this whole thing, and now not only now there could be a woman, but also does that forsake all of my other attraction, all of my other experience up to this point? And what do those two timelines look like? Because like I'm married to a man and also extremely active in the queer community, and it is like a huge part of my identity and my work, honestly. So like, I think with bisexual people, we face this, like, do we have to forsake one of our communities in order to, like, fit in and be accepted? And I think that there needs to be a lot more exploration around that and what that struggle really is.
And based on research, something that is important for representation to have a positive impact is that, so of course it's relatable, but also it's just not the coming out. It's the life after, what's going on, because it's reassuring. It's reassuring about the future. I can live my life this way.
Yes.
It's possible. And one of the things is, for bisexual representation, is that situation of having a life that is straight passing.
Yeah.
And how do I combine my identity? That I need to be strong, because I still struggle with internalized biphobia, but with social stigma as well. So I need to have this strong identity. But nothing in my life, as people see it, represents that or shows who I am and who I really am and what I really feel. So I think that's really a type of situation where representation can help to make sense of it and to also, give cues about how to also be still involved in the queer community and do things that help to have this strong identity as a bisexual person.
And on the other side, I don't think that all representation has to be necessarily realistic. It has to be true to the character, but it doesn't have to be set in a universe that is completely true to our own. And in a lot of ways, that also lends ground to celebrating bisexuality. Like, I was thinking about Crazy Ex-Girlfriend when Daryl comes out in song.
Yeah.
The song is so good. That is unrealistic, but that made me personally, and I think a lot of people, feel so good.
Yeah.
And in that way, we can suspend our disbelief about a lot of things because movies and TV are a fantastic medium that we can manipulate however we want. And in that way, we can go a little crazy and pretend that there is a world where these kinds of things are openly talked about, and maybe one day they will be.
Yeah, that's all amazing to listen to. I sort of feel like I'm like behind the curve a bit, because I'm a baby bisexual. But just saying the word, which is simple, and I know we already touched on, but even with Perry and I, with our 2-minute trailer, we got so many messages from people all over the world asking, like, are you going to say the word bisexual? Because in the 2-minute trailer, we don't, because it was based on this character who was based on me being like, what the fuck is going on? Who am I? What is this? And I, at the time, I was really trying to shove myself into a straight box or a gay box. And I didn't have friends, and I didn't feel like I had role models. And so she was figuring that out. But I think as many characters being able to say bisexual will help everyone and help representation, and is a wonderful note we got from our global YouTube audience that we took on, and that helped us learn and grow. So
I just want to add to that too, like, I think this can and should start now. I would love to see more older bisexual characters, because it feels like bisexuality started like only people who are 35 and under are bisexual. And you're like, that's not true though. And it makes it so much harder for all of us to know exactly what our lives can look like. I mean, I literally know one bisexual older woman. One. I mean, now in being, I facilitate a bi group at the LGBT Center in LA, so I do know a couple more now, but until very, very, very recently, there's only one who's like a real dear friend in my life who I know, and who is with a woman and who is not particularly out as bi. You'd kind of only know if you know her. And I think that like creating characters that are like, hey, I'm out, I've been bi since I was whatever, and I may be with a man or I may be with a woman, but this is still who I am. And I think the other thing about bi erasure and what we need to keep talking about is like, I think our culture really, because we hate sex, loves to make it so that we become completely desexualized once we are married. And that somehow now all of the rest of that is shut down and you've made your choice and that's it. And so there's no talking about who you are underneath your partner, you know, like underneath who you are with your partner. And I think not underneath, God damn it, guys, it's gonna keep happening. It's gonna keep happening. But like, you know what I mean? I that to me is very frustrating because we are not defined by the people that we are with, no matter who we are, and we shouldn't be. So we need to be able to talk about that more when we are in relationships.
Yeah, Annie Briggs from Carmela is from Toronto too, and she's good friends with Perry's partner Nat and us, and she worked as a story editor with us for a bit while we were script writing. And that, because she's been so entrenched in the beautiful queer web series world, I think, just like you, Nicole, has such a gauge on what's not being explored and what needs to be. And she gave us the beautiful note of being like, I would love to see an older character. Can Molly meet an older bisexual character? Because that's something I never get to see. And we're starting to figure that out and have gone to some bisexual meetups to meet people to explore that. But it's a really interesting and beautiful storyline that would be so wonderful to get to see.
Yeah.
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 I would like to see more bisexual NBs as well, and more just gender diversity. I think, because I think that's kind of the thing that I think sticks with me. And even some of the bisexual representations that I like Daryl in Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, and Dorothy in All for One, it's still very binary. And I think that we don't want to play into those kind of stereotypes that bi literally does not mean two. I mean, do you know what I mean? And kind of trying to kind of reclaim that word, because I think there's been kind of weird 4chan-y things trying to set us against each other, and do you know what I mean? Like, it's this idea that kind of if we can break up the LGBT from apart each other, we'll kind of destroy each other, and actually we need to support each other.
Yes.
But I will, like, I've had biphobia from gay people, like that is a thing I've experienced a lot, and like can we not? Can we just let everybody be nice?
Already too much on that point, to that point of like the drop the B, was that the hashtag? Fuck all those people. Yeah, there was like a whole hashtag going around and trying to get them to drop the beach from LGBT, and I was like, good luck with the branding, because that's going to be millions of dollars. But like the other thing that we have to realize is, language is always evolving, and I don't know, would I have come out as pansexual if that was even available to me 18 years ago when I came out? Like, the fact that bisexual was available to me was a miracle, so like maybe, but I also think, for those who wonder about that too, or like, I bi, but I don't know if that terminology works. A lot of people, myself included, define bi as, in terms of the binary, attraction to my own gender and other genders. So if you want to look at it like that, you absolutely can. And if you look up the definition of bisexuality, that's now included in there. So there is like a real push for bisexuality to be inclusive of all genders. So
just people nodding, I think anybody else. So this is kind of maybe a bigger and kind of sort of serious, but in terms of, as we have our psychologists with us, in terms of the impact on poor representation on mental health. So we know that bi people suffer worse mental health than both lesbian and gay people. They are more likely to be abused and experience trauma, and kind of how that ties into the lack of poor representation and how those two things tie together. And you wrote a thesis on it, so summarise.
I wrote my thesis on the positive thing, but okay. No, the thing is that the representation reflects a lot in the society and what's going on, and it makes things better as well, but it just perpetuates like tropes and ideas, and just the lack of representation, the fact that it doesn't exist in itself is a problem. Because the main challenge in terms of identity building, and we both talk a lot about identity building, because it's one of the things that protects us against stigma, against all the pressure we have as queer people. So to build your identity, you have to have, words available, to have models, to have the ideas that it's possible. If you don't have anything out there, well, you can't. And the problem is, when you are a sexual minority or gender minority, is that in your family you generally don't have those examples. You have to go look elsewhere. So you look in the media, And things have changed a lot since YouTube, since like we have access to a presentation that feels closer and where people can share their personal stories. It helps a lot. But so when you're bisexual or bi plus, to use the umbrella term, you need to have those examples because you can't fit in the binary, so it makes things a little bit more difficult. You know that in coming out pattern of bisexual people, it tends to be later in life, and it's a little bit more difficult because you have to navigate things, and you have to navigate the idea that it might be just a phase. Because yes, it happens that identifying as bisexual is just a phase for someone who will eventually identify as gay or lesbian, because it makes things a little bit more socially acceptable, ironically, at least for a while. Because parents can still think that there's a possibility of ending in a straight relationship. So all of that makes it a lot more difficult to navigate and to build that identity. Hence the importance of good representation. And any bad representation hurts because it just adds to the internalized stigma. Because it's not just what I've heard from the uncle, from someone, from the family, from the friends. It also becomes what the TV says, what the internet says, and that's horrible. Because it just makes you feel like you're not worth it and you can't be yourself when you can. You just need to understand who you are, make sense of who you are. And that's when the positive representation comes into play.
Yeah. And I'll also say this, growing up in Ukraine, I didn't really have any access to representation. Like, Queer as Folk was the first thing I torrented secretly and watched in the dead of night. But in that sense, online representation, and I'm talking about not just YouTube and podcasting, but also just talking to real live people on places like Tumblr. That was amazing to me. And I still, sometimes when I work with my queer clients, I encourage them to look for online communities because sometimes you don't have access to real face-to-face live communities where you are. So it's super important to have those online platforms where people can connect and share their stories through art or through conversation or through memes, whatever you do. And another thing is that increasingly more and more, I think both of us have been using examples from media in our work with our queer clients, because sometimes you're just like, remember that show? Yeah, I've seen that show. It's like that show where there's this queer character. Okay, cool. So you do that. And it's very nice to have that moment of connection, because as therapists, we can't really disclose much about our personal lives to our clients, but sometimes you want to let the client know that I got you, I know where you come from, I know what your story is. And so that's a way to self-disclose without really being like, by the way.
It's a shared knowledge.
Yeah, it's like a shared culture thing that you can draw on. It's a resource for a lot of things, and it's wonderful just to see a person talk about their life's problems, and then you mention something that they know, and they just light up. And I think it's kind of beautiful that we are able to do that nowadays.
Heidi, any thoughts on the
Don't
mental
really
health?
remember the question, but I like everything that I just heard.
Impact of poor representation on mental health of bisexual people, and how that kind of, I don't know whether that's something that you're looking at as part of your show.
I mean, it is, because we got a bit of constructive feedback about our trailer from one individual, only one. And it was a little hard because some things came up for me where I was sort of like, it's my story, I can say whatever I want. But I was happy, and she was an older member of the bisexual community, and she taught me a lot. She taught me how much not saying bisexual can be damaging for people who are watching it, and that was great. But my journey, I really, as I said already, I didn't even see being bi as an option. And I figured it out by writing the show and having all these people I'd never met before commenting on our little 2-minute trailer, being like, oh, this is me. This is my story. I did that to myself. And it took me 5 years of going to groups and meeting people and finding a community to accept myself as being bisexual. And that was so healing for me. It's just such a reward to get to put something out and connect to the community that you didn't even know you needed so badly. And I remember the first time I was like out in public and I was with Perry and I said in a conversation like, I'm bisexual, and like she noted it because she was probably waiting for me to say it for longer until I was ready to. She would never say it for me, but she was like, you called yourself bisexual tonight. And I was like, I did. That felt good. I don't know if that answered your question either, but that's me.
No, I think we're just sharing our experiences. I think because I think it's I just think story is powerful, and like that's why we're here, is because we love stories, and I think that they can do good and do bad. And sadly, with bisexual representation, it feels like it's been doing a lot of bad for a very long time. I'm hoping it feels like it's changing. I don't know whether people feel like generally. I don't know. Do you feel like it's getting better?
Slowly, I think.
Yeah, like I feel like we could at least name some that exist that are good, which I think maybe 10 years ago, I don't know if I could have thought of one good person.
The thing is one thing we haven't really talked about is that bisexual community is a silent majority.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And the numbers and representation really don't show that.
Mm-hmm.
Again, a bi character. Yeah, the thing is, there are more bisexual people than there are gay or lesbians, separately. So that's normal, but that's still something that's not there.
Yes.
That the normalization, I understand that for the numbers that we know, there are more people identifying as bi plus,
Yes.
as queer monosexual, I can say like this.
Yes. Yeah, and I think bringing up queer monosexual is important, and also something that's so exciting to me when I facilitate the bi-social group at the LGBT Center is the amount of diversity in the room. It's like ours is the most diverse group of all the groups that meet, because we have, not only like ethnically and diverse, but gender diverse. Oh my God, we have people who identify across the entire gender spectrum who come to the group, and I want to I want to zoom out and take a picture of everyone and be like, this is the bi community. We do not look one way, and we certainly are not all just like white sorority girls who are playing around, that's just not
Experimenting?
Experimenting, exactly. And you look at that swath and you're like, wow, actually this is a way bigger chunk of, and also ours is the second most highly attended group as well. The trans group is more regularly attended, but like that should say something as well, where you look at like our numbers. In fact, we had to add an extra 2 meetings a month because there was such a high demand for it. You look at this room, not every panel room is going to be full, and this one is almost. And I know at ClexaCon Vegas, it was like spilling out into the hallway, and that makes me so happy. I'm just like, come on, but it also it's on fans to ask for more and say we demand this. Because like the gay and lesbian communities demanded it for a long time, and I think that a lot of times bisexual people have made themselves okay with just being quiet and fitting in, because we can blend on either the straight or gay side to some extent and not rock the boat too much. And I think we need to start rocking the motherfucking boat.
And to go off of what you said, also, it's important that these characters that are being represented, they're not just three-dimensional, that they don't just have personalities. That's already a good thing that they have personalities, because they didn't. It was just like the evil bisexual who dies at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
But it also is a matter of increasing intersectionality.
Yes.
It's super important to see people represented, not just queer, not just the token queer, but also so many more things, because it's never just one thing. And it's important to see characters that are all-encompassing in that sense. And that's in terms of races, in terms of disabilities, in terms of everything. So, and that has been kind of getting better increasingly, and I think this year is the first time that there are more queer people of color on television than white queer people. So that's great. But that's the matter of representing the actual numbers and not, because until very recently, the queer character, like when you thought of a queer character on TV, it was like a white gay dude. It's like Kurt Hummel from Glee, that's about it,
And I think for me, it's also about shows often they'll have one. And then they'll be like, well, we've got one, so you don't need. So Supergirl, for example, like they won't let those potential things develop, even though queer coding is very happening. And I just feel like it's because people don't understand how many we are. Powerful.
Yeah, I actually was just talking about this the other day that like I offhandedly was like, well, we are 10% of the population, something, and then in my head I went, that can't be right. We gotta be more than 10%. And by we, I mean queer people in general, LGBTQ plus. I don't know. I'm excited about more stats on that.
Yeah, there are more. I mean,
Yeah, definitely.
there are studies that say now that about 20% in the US of the younger people identify as somehow queer.
Yeah.
So,
And I
Sounds
think it's
closer.
also a matter of like a lot of show creators, they wouldn't dare have more than one queer character just because like it's impossible for there to be more than one queer character. I'm like, queers flock together.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you're about to say so this just is a lone queer with no
Yeah.
queer friends?
I was saying this yesterday. I get surprised when I meet somebody who's monosexual, whether or not they're
Yeah.
gay or straight. I'm like, just one. But like, there's so many. I want to collect the whole set. That's the poly thing. It's just like, oh, you just, and it's just I think that everybody feels like that. Like somewhere like this, again, like everybody has that sense of community, and I think, yeah, it's weird. Straight people are weird. I don't know how to get more of a point than that. Does anybody in the audience have any questions for any of our panelists, or any thoughts on this, or do you want to yell, or do you want to come up and use a microphone?
Yeah.
Wait, what was
Has
the
anyone seen The Bisexual? It's on
The Bisexual,
BBC.
yeah.
BBC?
Oh no, I
Actually,
hadn't.
Yeah.
I saw the first episode.
Channel 4. Who? Do you? What is it?
we
What
saw-
have you felt
I mean,
about it?
so just one episode.
Yeah,
so
we just saw one episode. It was interesting.
Is that reality show where they all live in a house?
Oh, no,
together
that's
and
the
go on
Bi
dates?
Life.
Oh, that's the Bi Life.
Oh,
It's
interesting.
like a half-hour per episode TV show.
Okay.
It's quite interesting because it explores like you usually you would see characters where they used to think that they were straight and then they decided to go bi, right? That's the
Right.
trope. But in this show it's different because the main character, she's a woman who was in a relationship with a woman, engaged to a woman, and then she starts to explore her sexuality. And starts to define herself as bi. I mean, that's where I assume the show is going. So it's quite interesting to flip that because that's not something we see very often.
she's a person of color as well.
Yeah, she's a person of color as well. So I don't know.
It's interesting, but just one episode.
Yeah,
It's
we
a
can't
little
really
bit,
judge.
Yeah.
Those of you who've seen more, do people feel like it's a good representation? Like is that mostly seeing nods?
I've seen like quite a bit because the warning at the start is Desiree Efron, she's a writer and director. She just did the Miseducation of Cameron Poe.
Oh wow, okay.
Like she's pretty.
Knows what she's talking about. Yeah.
She's pretty good. It's a lot of it is kind of like refers to appropriate behaviour. It's based on her stories of bisexual Arabian woman, and like this kind of feeds into that as well. Like she has to talk about everything what it means to be like a ring, and what it means.
Cool.
Yeah.
She always thought that she was in a relationship with a man that had kids. She was like, oh, but I just want kids. Not
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's where it started, but it does it in like a quite funny way, like it's quite dark. And she makes jokes like bisexuality is getting made up, because that's the kind of thing that she's being told.
Right.
Oh yeah, that's the best one. Is that we're not
Yeah.
real.
It's like made up by like
We're invisible.
vodka companies and stuff.
Oh yeah, you're like,
It's like that, like dark humor in it, she's really she does it in Miseducation.
very cool.
Yeah.
Oh. I will check that out. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I just want to say one thing to the point that's now come up with this show and a couple other things that bisexuals coming out later and in relationships and things like I did a video called Married and Still Bisexual, and it got like thousands of views and people being like, thank you, because again, you get erased usually in your, and people are like struggling, especially in more rural communities and things where there isn't like a real queer community to be found, at least a really visible one. And I think Oh crap! Where was I going with that? I'm like, oh no!
You're married in.
Oh yes, okay. I think I remember now. So in the coming out, like, there's also this this idea that when we come out as bi, we are somehow, it's a betrayal. It's like a betrayal of the person that we are with or with the community that we have aligned with to that point. Especially, I think, if lesbians or gay men come out as bi later, then it's like, oh, fuck you. You're a turncoat. You're like, there is this like real awful stigma about that, and it's just so unnecessary. I mean, in the number of times I've heard lesbians who are even friends of mine be like, nah, I won't date bisexual people. I'm like, yo, would you walk into a bar and be like, I don't date black people? Like, could you fucking imagine if you said that? I mean, and granted, like, they're not the same thing, but like, that's how socially acceptable it is to just be like, no, I don't do that because those people, So it's no wonder that bisexuals have such internalized biphobia and also don't want to come out when they've been in a relationship with one sex or the other for so long because they're seen as some sort of betrayer. When you're like, it's not about you.
And if you're a bisexual woman in a relationship with a man, you don't want to get asked for a threesome straight away.
Oh my God.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Questions?
Really interesting chat, and I'm kind of wondering because it's something like I do in advice column and stuff, and I'm a therapist as well. And one of the things that seems to come up a lot, especially from the queer community, is this erasure because of being able to pass as heteronormative, and it's almost that trope of you haven't suffered enough to belong here. And I guess I kind of just wonder kind of that discussion because I find that really repugnant, and I kind of struggle with that because I would define myself more as queer than bi, but that mentality of you haven't suffered enough to belong is really pervasive in certain bits of the community, and I just kind of struggle with that. I kind of wonder about your points, I guess.
That's great.
We're technically running out of time, so does anybody want to have like one sentence answers?
I mean, I would just say that the whole idea of, you develop your identity through suffering, that's horrible. and it's true for a lot of people. We live in a very unfair world, and for a lot of people, yes, it's true. You have to suffer before you know who you are. But if you didn't, that's great for you. You don't have to be shamed for it. And that's something that I tell my clients. It's just like, you are who you are. You don't have to, like, I don't know, go beat yourself up for it. Like,
It's so Catholic, it's weird, but yeah. like honestly.
Yeah, it is.
It's another story.
No, my point is, if you don't feel any guilt, if you don't suffer, then don't make yourself suffer. That's it. Like, unless you like it. But otherwise, don't do it.
Well, and it's a different type of suffering.
Well, and it works in the opposite direction too. Like whenever somebody says something like that to me, or I get that vibe from someone, I'm like, oh, so I didn't have to come out. That didn't happen. I didn't have a coming out. By the way, I come out all the time to everyone. So there's that. It doesn't stop. And also, I have a coming out podcast, and a lot of the gay and lesbian people that we interview have had lovely, wonderful, blessed coming outs and have really not suffered. So this idea that like somehow there has to be this suffering, I think, is a myth. But the other thing is like, then I was in a relationship with a woman for 3 years, and you think anybody thought I was bi? You think I got treated with some sort of like heteronormative privilege? Fuck that. Of course I didn't. Like what this idea that somehow we haven't been indoctrinated enough, I think is just absurd. Yeah.
Just one thing here, I think, is just we have a lot of messages from people who listen to podcasts who are actually by people in straight relationships because they feel super isolated. And there's and in that situation, yes, there's a suffering there because they are completely isolated. And if their partner is not understanding, they're completely alone.
Yep.
Okay, so rounding up, I'm Phoebe. You can find me on the internet at Phoebe Kemp, or just search Phoebe Kemp. I'm the first one that comes up because I'm special. I'm also doing a panel tomorrow on deaf and disability LGBTQ representation. So if you want to go from what's problematic and good to where is it? Then come and see.
I'm Nicole Pacent. You can find me at Nicole Pacent on Instagram, Twitter. I don't really do Facebook anymore, but go for it. You can find Anyone But Me on Hulu. You can find my podcast on all streaming platforms. It's coming out with Lauren and Nicole. You can also find my YouTube videos. I don't post them regularly, but there's a lot of good stuff on there about bisexuality and mental health and all that good stuff. YouTube channel is Nicole Pacent. And yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
You do it.
Yes. The practice website is Pacent. We're both on there. Our podcast is Bi Positive. You can find us on iTunes and SoundCloud. We're also on Twitter and Instagram, although nothing really happens there. Yeah, that's about it.
And PSYNT.
Yeah.
I'm Heidi Lynch. You can find our show's Instagram at Avocado Toast Series. And Nicole and I are doing another panel at 5 called The Power in Sharing Vulnerable Stories. It's going to be moderated by Faye Marseille, the waif from Game of Thrones. And Kristen Baker from Tello Films will be on it, and Mandela Rose will be on it, and Perry Voss, my co-creator. Yay. So hopefully we'll see you at 5. And thank you guys so much for helping me pop my ClexaCon panel cherry.
Woo! Yay! Thank you, guys.